92.7 FM, Clutch with Keon Rose. Thank you for joining me today, making me just a small part of your day. You know that I appreciate each and every one of you. It's been raining a lot, and I have been saying every time that it rains that you need to stay safe on the road. Just a friendly reminder, because I prefer you alive. That's just generally how this goes. I think that today is probably specifically a little bit more. Like, I'm giving you double the warning is what I'm saying. What I am saying is I am giving you 3 times the warning, because we've got what's left of Hurricane Irma on top of us. And when I say what's left of, that is by no means to reduce the importance of what is happening with this storm, which, by the way, maintains a surprising amount of power. Head in this direction. We're talking about wind speeds up to 40 miles per hour. So I'm saying, stay inside, stay safe, make sure that you've got your phones charged and everything that needs to be up to date there, so that you can be prepared just in case the worst happens, right? Understand where you are. Understand that Chattanooga, we're not designed to take this kind of punishment, because we don't take this kind of punishment very often. And so we're talking about trees that we have that are taller than in a lot of places. This isn't Florida. We don't have palm trees. We're talking about some of our taller buildings. Just make sure that you're being safe out there, and, you know, call your family, make sure that everybody knows where everybody is, and that there is some kind of plan. Now, we are going to be talking later on in the show. We're going to have an interview that is going to cover a lot of the storm scenarios going on. So we're going to have a lot of that going on as well. And let's see what we got going on here. We got some football to get into. But what I'm here to talk about, I think, initially, because we do have the SEC to get to. Oh, we had the NFL, even though the NFL upsets me, so we're going to get to that too. But when it comes to college football, right, and I got a memo, I got an email specifically from the director of communications of the SEC, sending out a quote from SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey, saying that they're trying to get the Tennessee-Florida game that was scheduled to happen in Gainesville this upcoming Saturday. They were trying to get this game back on track, right? Here's the quote that I have. Now that the storm has passed through Gainesville, the University of Florida is working with local authorities to assess the effect of the storm on the campus and the Gainesville community, at the same time ensuring the appropriate security and local officials are available to host the game. So they're trying to make sure that all the proper personnel, safety, and all those other things that you need to have a successful football game are back on track, so that they can have this game now that Irma is past, right? And you're trying to make sure that everything is still in tip-top shape, that the facilities are still in usable array, that people are able to still travel well, that you have. And I can't imagine this is going to be a game that's going to make a ton of money. It's one that's going to be played because it's just got ramifications in the SEC. But it is something that they're trying to get off the ground and making sure that that happens. And I think that this is just the constant reminder that, you know, football and sports in general, not the most important things in our lives, right? Like, we want to think that they're the most important things in our lives. And I am of the opinion that they are very, very important. But they are not the most important things, and Mother Nature doesn't give a damn about your football. I mean, just doesn't care at all. Right? And I think it's extra relevant now that the storm is here, right? That we can at least have some level of context and some level of an idea as to what it is that people went through when this storm was worse. Right? Like, Mother Nature is stronger than football. And I feel like, while this was obvious to everyone, I think it bears repeating, because, man, when you see some of these games getting canceled, and a few of them were, right? Florida's game this past week against Colorado State got canceled. And you're wondering, like, man, what are they going to do about that? Like, make sure to focus your eyes on the people, on the human aspect of this, of the families that are trying to get out of the storm's way, and the people who are surviving and trying to make it without any, you know, cell phone towers and communications, because all those things got knocked down. And understand that there is a version of that, not the worst possible version, but a version of that headed our way, right? And if it could happen to them, it could happen to us also. Mother Nature does not care about your sports. That's what I learned from all of this. And we can try and reschedule the game, and I hope that it does play out, because I think it's a big time rivalry. It matters to everybody, but it is also a situation in which you just have to make sure that your priorities are correct, that they're in the right place, that your mind is in the right place. And when it comes to a storm like this, you got to put the people first, man. When it comes to your thoughts, when it comes to your prayers, and when it comes to your donations, you got to put the people first, man. Right? Like that nature takes precedence over everything else. So when it comes to lives, we've got to make sure we put people over everything else. And that includes the football. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. But the game is we'll see. I'll let you know how that story develops, if we're able to get that thing played at all. But just the dose of reality that these storms bring into being, right? And by the way, like, this is not lost on me that today is also the anniversary of 9/11, that you're just looking at it and going, man, there is a certain level of reality that every now and then just hits you, and hopefully clears your mind, hopefully gives you some level of perspective. Because, yesterday the NFL season started, and if you've listened to the show with any degree of clarity whatsoever, you know that I'm a gigantic Redskins fan, and yesterday the Redskins played terrible football and made me upset, and made me just flip and blow my mind, and all the ways that they often always do. And quite frankly, got to remember, like, that's not the most important thing. It's just not. I mean, I want to put it up there with other stuff, but it's just not the most important thing. Like, it humbles you, right? Like, when you think about the bravery of heroes on 9/11, when you think about the power of nature, when you think about all the things that are coinciding on today, it humbles you, and it reminds you what is truly and actually important, right? So I'm going to get into all of the football. I'm just saying, I find it clarifying every now and then to take a step back and get yourself a little bit of perspective before you get too far down the rabbit hole of all this stuff. Now, with that said, let's jump into the SEC. Let's jump into what it looked like around the SEC yesterday, because there was a lot of interesting things that happened, and a lot of things that got learned. Some interesting things did not happen, right? Like, Alabama played Fresno State yesterday, or not yesterday, 2 days ago. 41-10 was the score, Alabama over Fresno State, which is a score that ought to surprise absolutely zero people. None whatsoever. Why? Because Alabama is the best school in the nation, and Fresno State can't hang with Alabama. There's a lot of schools that Fresno State can't hang with. Alabama was certainly going to be very high on that list. Didn't learn anything from that game. Learned absolutely no things. Now, here's a game that I did learn something from. The other Alabama school, Auburn. Clemson played Auburn in a game that, to me, is one of those games that's giving you an outline of what actually matters in college football and what actually matters across conferences, right? Anytime you have these cross Power 5 matchups, they start sketching an outline of who is who in college football, right? Clemson is a school that wants to get back to the playoff. They want to see if they can try and get another national title, and a lot of people are doubting them because they don't have Deshaun Watson anymore. And when you lose a guy that's that dynamic at that position, the most important position in the game, and he's got a level of being dynamic that very few guys have, there's going to be a lot of doubters, present company included, by the way. Like, I just don't see how Clemson gets back, and they're playing better than I thought. And to be fair, that Clemson defense is very often overlooked, and they're really good. They are lights out levels of fantastic, and they showed that yesterday against Auburn. And Auburn, by the way, for what it's worth, showed their muscle as well. Now, this game, I think, was more important for Auburn, right? Because you're Auburn, you have to figure, playing in the SEC West, you are going to catch an L somewhere. You don't have a say in the matter. Alabama, you've got to play them at the end of the season. You've got to play LSU. You're going to be playing a lot of very tough opponents, a lot of schools with a lot of great quarterbacks, because I don't know how you're going to shut down this Drew Lock guy. I mean, Drew Lock coming to life. I mean, so you've got a lot of problems if you're an SEC West school. Losing to a school outside of your conference is simply not acceptable if you're saying that your goal is to reach the playoff. Like, those are the matchups that get you over, right? Like, unless you're saying you're going to beat everybody in the SEC West, which if you're Auburn, I guess is not impossible. And certainly every defense that you face is not going to be Clemson's defense, right? Clemson's defense is impressive. But here's the thing that you have to realize about facing Clemson's defense. I don't know that Clemson's defense is tougher than Alabama's defense. And I don't know that Clemson's defense is tougher than LSU's. And certainly if you fall behind LSU and LSU gives you that deadly dose of Darius Geis, I mean, you're done. You're done. You are flattened. You better look out. You know what I mean? So this is one of those situations where I am all for the notion of testing yourself against these other Power 5 schools. But if you're Auburn in this situation, you got to win. And now you got to win out, I think. And look, your offense is limited. And I'm a guy that I'm still a big believer in Jarrett Stidham. I think a lot of people hopped off the Jarrett Stidham bandwagon last week, which is a little insane, right? You can't hop off the Jarrett Stidham bandwagon like 2 games into the season and against one of the toughest defenses in the nation. That seems absurd to me, right? But he didn't play his best. Now, some of that is on Stidham, but some of that is on that offensive line, which I did not realize was as bad as it was. I mean, that offensive line was terrible. The poorest doesn't even begin to describe what was happening with Auburn's offensive line. Jarrett Stidham was running for his life on a number of plays, and that, minus the fact that they didn't have Keon Johnson, who to me is, outside of Stidham, the most important guy on that team, because balance is important. Balance is important in college football. It's important everywhere, but it's particularly important in college football. And it's one of the things that I'm noticing, that I think that you can't win in college football without a quarterback. In that way, we've just become more like the NFL. But you can't win in college football if your quarterback is pretty good, right? Like, not the once in a generational talent, but if your quarterback is merely pretty good and you can't run the ball, you're toast. You're toast. I mean, that's it. I don't know what else you're supposed to do after that. You are done. And I'm looking at Auburn, and I'm like, without Keon Johnson, this team is toast. And that offensive line is not designed for pass protection. I don't know if they are particularly designed for some kind of stretch running, which sometimes does put you at a disadvantage of pass protection. But, man, they're not designed for pass protection. I can tell you that. Anybody with eyes can tell you that, because there were plays that needed to develop, and Jarrett Stidham had seconds to pull the trigger. I'm not entirely certain that Gus Malzahn is going to keep his job at the end of this season. And this is a make or break year for this guy. And he's supposed to be an offensive guru. You finally have the quarterback, because I don't care what anybody says. Jarrett Stidham can play. You finally have the quarterback. And sure, Keon Johnson wasn't playing, but you're the guy that's supposed to figure it out. Your offensive line can't be this bad. Your excuse the entire time was that you didn't have the quarterback, right? That Gus Malzahn is an offensive guy with no quarterback. And for me, I am willing to give people that excuse. But when you get the quarterback, you do not then at that point get to complain about everything else. You don't. So that's Jarrett Stidham's first real test, by the way, against a solid defense. Is one of the better defenses in the nation. And yeah, he looked completely and powerfully average. He looked absolutely average in every sense of the word. which is a little disconcerting, but also when I consider there's no offensive line for him to stand behind and there's no running game with him. And he is throwing to a group of talented receivers. But again, if you don't have time for those plays to develop, I don't necessarily know what you're supposed to do. I can't really put the bulk of the burden on Mr. Jarrett Stidham. Can't do it. Right? And Clemson beats them 14-6 in a very defensive battle. And I think that Auburn's season is really just beginning here. I don't think that this is one of those things where you feel like this is signifying a school in the death spiral, though Auburn can't afford to really lose any more games here. Next week, though, they play Mercer and Missouri and Miss State. I mean, they've got a nice run of games that they can win after this. But it's going to be tough going from here on out. I mean, they still have to play in this season. They still have to play Alabama. They have to play Georgia. They have to play Texas A&M, who, I mean, capable of losing any game, but also capable of winning a large number of them. They have to play LSU. They have to play Mississippi State, which I will never, ever, ever sleep on Dan Mullen at Mississippi State. So, I mean, you're just looking at a schedule that's more or less tough, and you've already lost one of the games that I think that if you want to make a claim for the college football playoff, you have to have won. Now you're hoping at some point that someone else is losing a couple of games along the way, and then you've got a chance to challenge Alabama at the end, right? You're hoping that LSU loses a couple, and you're hoping that Alabama loses at least one. And this is the kind of tragedy of it, that like already this early in the season, you're not really controlling your own destiny. You're having to hope for people to lose. And it's a really, really tough spot to be in when you are hoping for Nick Saban and Alabama to lose. Clutch with Keon Rose on AM 1240 and 92.7 FM. LSU versus UTC went about exactly how you thought that would go, right? The mocks showed up. They showed up at LSU. They showed up at Baton Rouge and got run. They got run. I mean, it's not their fault. Like, this is just one of those things where they are just overmatched. And I don't know if I learned anything about LSU. Anytime the Mocs play these games, I learned something about the Mocs, which is that they always continuously play with a lot of heart. And last year when they played Alabama, and while I don't believe they scored a touchdown against Alabama, they did a lot of things to cause Alabama to have a weirdly odd and bad offensive game by Alabama standards. And it was incredible. Absolutely incredible. So Tennessee plays Indiana State. We're going to get into that game yesterday or this past weekend. We're going to get into the Georgia and Notre Dame game as well around the SEC coming up around the corner. But I also want to talk a little bit about Lamar Jackson and Louisville in the ACC, because we were talking about SC or Heisman Trophy candidates, right? Guys that can win the Heisman Trophy. And Lamar Jackson's name was not at the top of that list at the beginning of the season. Guess what you have to do now? You have to put Lamar Jackson back at the top of that list, because Lamar Jackson is lighting defenses on fire. And we all forgot, right? Like the last handful of games at the end of last season, Lamar Jackson looked human. And so we forgot that Lamar Jackson is actually some kind of machine. Lamar Jackson might actually be some kind of Terminator. That's what we actually forgot, because that guy is doing something that is beyond superhuman, which is to say he is scorching defenses when you know what he's going to do. Like, Lamar Jackson is a guy that you can easily underestimate, I think, because he does not necessarily have the deepest skill set. Lamar Jackson's got like two things really going for him, which is why I worry about him at the next level. I worry about him at an NFL level. But Lamar Jackson's two things that he's got going for him, he's really great at those two things, right? Like his running ability is one of those things. He is not just fast. He is an amazing open field runner. He's unpredictable. He's shifty. He's hard to catch. And he puts the moves on people. I mean, he embarrasses them. He jukes guys out of their socks. And the other thing that Lamar Jackson does well He's got a heck of an arm. He throws a deep ball that is beyond beautiful. And to me, the two of those things put together makes Lamar Jackson one football player you can't take your eyes off this entire season. And we completely underestimated the guy. You're listening to Clutch with Keon Rose on AM 1240 and 92.7 FM. We're going to get back to the SEC, breaking it down for you at the top of the next hour. We've got an interview coming up for you next. Stick around.
Three, two, one.
Chattanooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM's news now.
Hurricane Irma, now Tropical Storm Irma, is moving over Chattanooga. And we're beginning to feel the deadly effects of the storm, and it's only going to get worse as time goes on. Winds up to 55 miles per hour could be felt overnight, and we're supposed to get about 3 inches of rain throughout the week. The Electric Power Board in Chattanooga is anticipating power outages, and in Georgia, a state of emergency has been declared for all counties. Schools closed both Monday and Tuesday. In Hamilton County, however, schools so far remain open. Heavy rains and high winds are going to continue throughout our day into tomorrow, even the day after, eventually tapering off by Thursday. Flash flooding is possible in the Chattanooga area, and downed power lines are expected. Trees falling on roadways also anticipated by TDOT. Russell Stroud, Nooga Radio News Talk 92.7. Now.
In-depth traffic, news, and information. Mornings on Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM. Broadcasting live to over 1 million souls in Chattanooga, the Tennessee Valley, and beyond on frequency modulation 92.7. Sean Hannity. 25,000 watts on digital FM 95.3 HD4. CBS Radio News. Pulsing the earth with amplitude modulation on 1240. NASCAR. Bloomberg Markets. David Tulis. Streaming strong at NoogaRadio.com. Live on YouTube and Facebook. Nooga Radio. News Talk 92.7. Chattanooga Radio.
Don't punish your gun by leaving it in a corner. Shoot it, sell it, or just toss it. Okay. Don't toss it. Make money with it. Shooter Supply and Indoor Range, the hottest gun shop in town. Finds buyers for your extra firearms. Put cash in your pocket today. Are ARs cluttering your closet? Rugers rusting in your rec room? Shooter's Supply and Indoor Range in Hickson will take your firearm and put it on consignment. To you, that means no money out of your pocket with a small fee when the gun sells. Larry at Shooters has got an online store. He's licensed to ship anywhere. It's as if Shooter Supply were giving your billfold cover fire. Get the biggest number of bucks from the smallest Derringer to the longest Barrett. Maximum price, shortest time. What a great deal. Shooters-range.com. Shooters-range.com. That's shooters-range.com. Check with Larry.
When my brother and I opened the first Jets Pizza, we believed if we made the best pizza, customers would find us. So we made fresh dough each day, used fresh toppings, and premium mozzarella cheese. 300-plus stores later, we still do.
Try Jet's famous 8-corner pizza with premium mozzarella cheese and one topping, now just $11.99 for a limited time only. Jet's Pizza, the best pizza in town. 3600 Hickson Pike.
Life is short. Eat better pizza.
Let's get Jets.
Hi, this is Eric Pelton. Taxes, accounting, business advice. I've got a neat brochure, 12 ways to improve your business profits. Come on by for a free consultation and we'll give you a copy. E.J. Pelton Company, 332-3339.
I have the best steak selection in town. Name of the business is Don's Meat Shop, and I'm Donnie Raines. Just ask for Donnie. I make over 20 different types of sausages. Most of them are great for grilling. We have the best selection, best quality. We have the hard-to-find items. Don's Meat Shop.
In this moment, who has your back? Do you know the name of your insurance agent? Does your agent know your name? Or would you call a 1-800 number that connects you with whom? Another state? Another country? Get a local independent insurance agent with Auto Owners Insurance. Someone you can call when bad stuff happens. In this moment, get an agent who will protect you in that moment. Let Goss Insurance in Chattanooga help you today. GossInsurance.wordpress.com. Goss, representing Auto Owners Insurance, the no problem people. GossInsurance.wordpress.com. Goss, representing Auto Owners Insurance, the no problem people. 875-2500, 875-2500. GossInsurance.wordpress.com. Goss, representing Auto Owners Insurance, the no problem people. 875-2500. Let Goss Insurance in Chattanooga help you today. GossInsurance.wordpress.com.
Hi, I'm David Crockett, and I'm here with David Tulis, and we're having a little discussion over who's the number one Nooga centrist. If you want to keep up with free market ideas, then read Nooganomics.com. David Tulis, the blogger with the biggest pen.
Hi, this is Chrissy, and this is Summer of Summer Cares. There are too many homeless veterans in Chattanooga. Please help us in our Shoebox for Veterans campaign. You can fill a shoebox with hand warmers, hand sanitizers, hand wipes, cough drops, razors, shaving cream, toothbrush, toothpaste, soap, shampoo, deodorant, snacks, socks, gloves, and even a small blanket.
And make sure you drop your shoeboxes or your shoebox items off at Nooga Radio Studio on Hickson Pike across from Bojangles below Goss Insurance or Alpine Crest Elementary School.
Please join us at the Community Kitchen in Chattanooga on November 10th from 11 to 12:30 and help us distribute these care packages to the homeless veterans of Chattanooga. No veteran should ever go homeless.
News Talk 92.7's Fast Forecast. Now, 61 degrees for our evening as we finish up the workday, getting up to 63 today for the high and 61 for the low. Rain expected to continue overnight with high winds, heavy rain pelting us. Tuesday, 65 for the high and 60 for the low. Then Wednesday, 70 for the high, 61 for the low. Rain really not letting up until Thursday with high winds coming in from Irma. That's your Fast Forecast now.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM knows your opinion is important. So call 800-8949. Agree or disagree. Call 423-800-8949. 800-8949. Nooga Radio, AM 1240, 92.7 FM, and 95.3 HD4. News, talk, sports. Nooga Radio.
You're listening to AM 1240 and 92.7 FM. Clutch with Keon Rose here on Nooga Radio and NoogaRadio.com. And we are here with our community engagement specialist for a special interview for you all with the Red Cross to talk about essentially what it is that they're doing with Hurricane Irma and Hurricane Irma victims. So, Jay?
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
It's been a minute since I've been here, but I'm excited. Today we come with excitement to talk to the Red Cross and Heavy Hearts. We have seen a lot of just devastation over the last couple weeks, even with what's been happening in Houston and across the southeastern United States. And I guess that's technically Western. How would we call it? Western, right? Like kind of that whole southern region.
Just the south.
Pretty rough.
And
I know for me, I've got family members that we're still waiting to hear from up in Florida. So it is with that I'm really excited to get in here. We have Julia Wright with us from the Red Cross. She is the executive director of the American Red Cross of Southeastern Tennessee. Julia, hi.
Hi, thanks for having me.
We are so excited that you are here. Thank you so much for being with us this afternoon. So let's jump into it. The Red Cross, a lot of people know about it, but can you tell us a little bit more about what the Red Cross is and what it does?
So our mission is to provide assistance to people that are experiencing a crisis. We're a humanitarian organization, and I think you can see most of our work in the last couple of weeks have been high visibility. But a lot of times you don't see our work that we do locally, such as when we go out to help folks after a single-family fire, or helping our military members and their families reconnect during a crisis. But I think today we want to talk a little bit about, what we're doing in relation to Hurricane Irma. And we're doing a lot of things in the last couple of weeks, not only with Hurricane Irma, but also with Hurricane Harvey.
Okay. Wow, that's pretty cool. So what I'm hearing you say is that you are both local, but you can do both micro and macro work, meaning, you can, again, be local, but you are also able to travel nationwide. Is that correct?
Right. So we have over 116 volunteers that have deployed out to help with either Hurricane Harvey or Hurricane Irma over the last 2 weeks. So those are local volunteers in the state of Tennessee that have been trained. They've come in, they've registered, they've got signed up, they've trained, and they've prepared themselves to be a really great asset during a disaster, so that when something happens, we know who they are, what skill sets they have, and we can easily put them in the position that they can be of most help.
That's amazing. And I think we'll get a chance to talk a little bit more about what that looks like in a little bit. But the burning question that I have on my mind, Julia, is to understand a little bit about the severity, maybe first of Harvey. What have you heard, and what is the news on the ground about the Harvey and Houston victims?
Yeah, so last night we were still sheltering over 7,500 people in 33 Red Cross and partner shelters across Texas. There's been over 350,000 overnight stays in our shelters just for Hurricane Harvey, and we fed 1.6 million meals and snacks in Texas.
Wow.
And in addition to that, we have 3,400 Red Cross disaster workers on the ground in Texas, with an additional 500 on the way.
Wow. That is a lot of people. Both people being helped.
It's massive. It is very massive. We have 190 of our emergency vehicles that are out delivering supplies and delivering those meals out into the community as people are trying to get their lives back together. And that's really just in Texas. That's not even talking about what we're doing with Hurricane Irma, which has a whole other set of statistics that we're going on there. We have 1,800 workers there, with about 400 more on their way. And last night we had over 208,000 people that were in one of our 680 either government or Red Cross evacuation centers across 6 states. That includes everything from Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, the U.S. Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, Tennessee, and North Carolina.
Wow, that is a lot. And that's amazing. So can you tell us a little bit about some of the staging efforts that you also mentioned in Florida, or for the Florida victims? I know you just said that you had a lot of people kind of spread out across these different states, but what is that looking like in terms of specifically the Florida victims?
So the evacuation centers, we have about approximately 200,000 people are in 587 evacuation centers in Florida. So those are the people that are closer in, that may evacuation centers are usually a little bit shorter term, depending on what the disaster looks like and what their ability is to return to their homes, whether they had damage. Some of those areas were much harder hit, and those evacuation centers will turn into shelters. A lot of them will. That's where it's a little bit more, we ramp up a little bit more. So the first night, we're just trying to get people a safe place, get them where that we know that they have a place to go in the immediate until they can get back and kind of check on their place. And so I'm sure that we'll have some more numbers over the next few days. Here locally, we've had 31 people at our local shelter at the East Brainerd Church of Christ. We partner with the local church there to house folks as they came in. We've opened that up last Thursday, and we've been able to really help those folks. We've fed about 195 meals and snacks and provided about 100 overnight stays since last Thursday.
Wow. That's a lot to be proud of. That is amazing.
It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of people and manpower, and it really it has a lot to do with our community. We have a great community here that's very supportive, and we have volunteers that are willing to step up and take those shifts at the shelter, the nurses that come in and are willing to come in and help folks when they have those needs. As far as we have, they come, a lot of times they don't have a lot of their items with them. They'll bring what they can, but if you tried to pack to leave suddenly, inevitably you're going to leave things, and every now and then it'll be those most important things like your medications.
Right.
So our nurses are there to make sure that people have those kind of things available to them, and our shelter workers are there just make sure they're as comfortable as possible in what is not the ideal situation.
That is pretty awesome. So another question that I've always wanted to ask you, when we talk about a shelter, I understand that there's a lot of pieces that go into a shelter being run. But for the average person who's maybe not ever stayed in a shelter, what can you say about the days or the nights, the life of a person, the average life of a person living in a shelter for a few days? What would that look like?
So like I said, it's not the most ideal situation. It is an emergency shelter. It is a place for them to stay that's safe. We provide them with a hot meal. We provide them with, access to some medical services. We have a dormitory area, so it is an open sleeping area where there will be lots of cots and blankets. And then we have another area where we have tables for, where they can have lunch or dinner. And we usually set up a TV so they can kind of keep abreast of what's going on during the disaster, especially as far away as this one is, so they can kind of monitor when it's safe to go home. We also provide, some games and things for the kids to try to keep them entertained. And really, it's just a lot of it is just listening to them talk. They want to talk about, what their experiences is and maybe some of their concerns and worries. And, our staff are kind of trained to do that and to be able to, really just comfort folks in a very difficult situation.
That is amazing. And it sounds really comprehensive. I guess, one of the things that we think of is like, you'll just be sitting there with nothing to do. And it sounds like you all have a pretty cool system set up that cares for not only the physical need of shelter, but also the felt need of just comfort, camaraderie, and just wanting to know what's happening. That's pretty cool. So what can you tell us from your perspective? What are some of the long-term issues that you think that some of these folks might be facing?
So I think every disaster is a little different. I think with this one, it depends on where they came from and how impacted their community is. We still have a lot of power outages across Florida and even into Georgia. Some of those may be short term, but some may be even longer term, depending on the severity of what they're going back to. I mean, each person's disaster experience and needs are very individualized for their family. And so that's why we have trained folks that will talk to them and identify what their needs and help them work through that recovery process so that they can get back to as much of a normalcy as they possibly can.
That is awesome. That is very, very awesome. And again, you're listening to Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM. And we're talking with Julia Wright, the Executive Director of the American Red Cross of Southeast Tennessee. And we're really excited. And we're talking a little bit again about some of the issues that some of these victims from Houston to Florida and on are possibly facing. Julia, I know that some folks here in Tennessee are even worried about power outages and things like that tonight.
Absolutely.
Question, what are some of your thoughts on just emergency preparedness in general? What are some of the things you would want us, the public, to know about preparation?
So one of the things that we suggest that everyone have before a disaster strikes is their emergency supply kit. And your emergency supply kit will have a 3-day supply for each person in your family. And, that consists of things like water and non-perishable foods, maybe a blanket and a pillow and any kind of bedding supplies. But really important is to make sure you have your medications, any type of, if you wear glasses, make sure you have your glasses, any hearing aids, those kind of things, contact lenses. You want to have all these kind of items together. If you have a baby, you want to make sure you have supplies for your baby, such as, formula and bottles, diapers, those kind of things, and any kind of personal hygiene items. And then, with children, you want to make sure you bring a comfort item with them. And one of the things that we do as the Red Cross is we promote folks, and especially our children, to be prepared. And so we do a program here locally, and we teach about 800 kids a year. It's called the Pillowcase Project, and it's where we teach kids about, about how to be more prepared for a disaster and how they can put together their own kit. And then also it teaches them some coping mechanisms if they ever experience a disaster, kind of how to help them be more calm and get through those kind of things. So we do some things locally to try to teach kids, and this is a program we do throughout the United States, to teach our children how to be a little bit more prepared in case a disaster happens to their family.
That is phenomenal. Actually, you said a word that triggered me as a social worker who works with emergency management and trauma. You said the word coping. So 2 questions come to mind off the top of my head, and I hope that's okay. My first question would be psychological first aid. I think a lot of times when we have these disasters, the people who've experienced the disasters can have trauma from that experience, as well as people who are vicariously helping, as well as people who are observing. So what is your advice to those who are either, watching these news cycles 24/7, or those who are responding, or those who are working with those who have been directly affected? What are your thoughts on psychological first aid?
So the great thing about the Red Cross is we have a class called Psychological First Aid, and it's something we train all the volunteers in before they would deploy. That's one of the classes we offer them. It teaches them how to identify when someone may be having some problems or experiencing some of those stress indicators that you kind of alluded to. So we train our staff on that, our volunteers. But we also have mental health professionals, and we have those deploy as well as our nurse and health service folks. And they're not just for the clients, they are for the clients, but we have them that are specifically to help the workers, because there's a huge stress of being the person who is going out and helping others. They are experiencing that disaster very similar, but in a different way. When they're out trying to help. And so a lot of times they need someone to talk to as well. They may be taking on some of the emotional burden of the disaster victims that they're helping, especially it's not just one family, but it's multiple families over and over and over they're seeing all day long. And that can take a toll on our workers. And so we want to make sure that both their health and their mental health is in good shape as well, so that they're ready to help others.
Again, phenomenal. And that's really exciting to hear. So I guess when we think about, working with people who are victims, we think about what we can do. And again, you're listening to Nooga Radio, AM 1240, 92.7 FM. And we're talking with Julia Wright, Executive Director of the American Red Cross of the Southeast Tennessee chapter. And we're excited about that. And we're talking about what we can do. So Julia, what can we do when we're talking about having sensitivity and training and all these different things? What can we, those who want to help, do to help those who are victims of Harvey or Irma?
So one of the great things that you can do, there's 2 things that help the Red Cross the most, and one is our volunteers and the financial donations. So volunteering is pretty straightforward. We have a website that you can go to at redcross.org, and you can click on the volunteer tab and fill out your volunteer application. Or if you're available tomorrow, we have some training scheduled in our office on South Access Road that folks are invited to come out to if you're interested in becoming a volunteer. We have volunteer positions, not only those that will deploy out and go into other areas, but here locally, we have a lot of volunteer opportunities for folks as well. And then the other is, of course, to make a financial donation to the Red Cross, getting people to where they need to be, getting the vehicles and all the resources and supplies, and providing the shelters and feeding folks. That there's a financial cost to all those things. And so we encourage folks to provide us with a financial donation because it's the fastest way that we can help those clients in the field. It helps them to get what they need, when they need it, and how they need it.
That is awesome. Okay, so here's a pet question. A lot of people, always wonder, we give all this money, but where does it go? Can you talk a little bit about where the money goes once it's been donated? What that looks like?
So the Red Cross honors donor intent. So if you designate a donation to Hurricane Irma, it will go to help victims and people affected by Hurricane Irma. And the donations are used to help prepare for, respond to, and help people recover from this disaster, specifically whichever disaster if you designate. And this includes things like food, shelter, relief supplies, emotional support, recovery planning, other assistance, as well as supporting things like our vehicles, our warehouses, and our technology, and making sure those volunteers and people are where they need to be to help as much as possible.
That is also very amazing. Okay. So it can be donated. I can specify where my donations go, which that's really, really cool. As we kind of come to a close here, I have just a few more follow-up questions. You mentioned both the Pillowcase Project and that you have training even tomorrow. And you said redcross.org. And again, this is Nooga Radio, AM 1240, 92.7 FM. We're talking with Julia Wright, Executive Director of the American Red Cross of Southeast Tennessee. And we're just kind of talking about what we can do here to help those who have been affected by either Irma or Harvey or any of these disasters. And again, redcross.org is what Ms. Wright has given us as an option to look and see what we can do to get involved in. So we are getting ready to wrap up here. What is the last thing that you would like to say to our audience? Anything you would like us to know?
Yeah, so one of the things you mentioned is that maybe you were having trouble connecting with a family member. I just wanted to remind folks that we have a website called safeandwell.org, and it is a free reunification tool that allows individuals and organizations to register and post messages to indicate that you're safe or to search for loved ones. And we want to make sure that people are aware that that's available, and it is available in Spanish as well as English. So we want to make sure that you have the opportunity, if you're looking for someone after a storm like this, that is a great place to go in and let people know that you're safe after the storm, but it's also a great place to go see if they've registered. So we promote that before every storm and during every storm so that folks know that, it's this many people affected by a storm. You're going to have some disconnection, and we want to do everything we can to get people reunified with their families.
That's awesome. Well, Julia, it's been wonderful. Thank you so much for talking with us here at Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM. We're really excited. Folks, if you've been listening, check out redcross.org and safeandwell.org if you're looking to reconnect with friends and family over this event. Thank you so much, Julia. Safe travels. And we look forward to connecting with you again here at Nooga Radio.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we are really excited that we had the opportunity to talk to Julia Wright. Here at Nooga Radio, we're going to keep giving you some live updates as we continue to kind of track what's been happening, especially in our local area with Hurricane Irma. I guess it is wind that is coming through here. And we are just, again, reminding you to stay safe, be prepared. Oh, and we've got some incoming updates. Stay tuned, and we've got some information.
All right, Nooga Radio, traffic and weather.
Hi, Mike Steele on Highway 58 near Harrison. The wind is picking up. There's still many people on the roads. Too many people on the roads because I'm seeing limbs now break from trees. You want to avoid parking your car under a tree to avoid your car getting damaged from the wind. I actually see some cars being blown around. With the eye of the storm it looks like it's about 35 miles away. We're going to have wind gusts 55 to 65 miles an hour. If you do not have to get out and drive tonight, don't. Get to where you be and stay there. Roads are very slick. We know that because we had a lot of sun A lot of oil on the roads, a lot of road construction. This water meets the road. It's very slick, and these conditions are not very good right now on Highway 58, and it is even getting windier. Now, of course, we're going to keep you posted on Nooga Radio News Talk 92.7, AM 1240, 95.3 HD4 throughout the night. So make sure you have your radio locked in to 95.3 HD4, 92.7, 1240. If you don't have a radio, I think it's too late to go out and get one. But rummage through your cabinet right now, find those batteries, and make sure when your lights go out, because we'll keep you posted. We have a direct line to EPB just in case there is a power outage. We'll let you know approximately when they'll get to your neighborhood and approximately how many people are out of power and approximately when your power is gone. We also have shelter information and so on and so forth. Keon, I wouldn't recommend you leave there at 8 o'clock, buddy.
I hear you, Mike. Look, it does look.
At this point, I would stay put for at least another hour or two. We have other reports coming in from Saudi Daisy and broadcasting live from Highway 58 in the middle of Irma. Nooga Radio, News Talk 92.7.
Let's talk about your timeshare, can we?
Wow, it sounds pretty intense out there.
It does.
I'm not gonna lie.
We've got reports coming in from all over the place. Keep in touch here. Keep it locked in here with Nooga Radio, AM 1240, 92.7. We've got reports coming in from Saudi Daisy. We've got reports coming in from Chattanooga. So we've got reports all over and Georgia as well, the northern Georgia area. Keep it locked in here. We've got all the information that you're going to need. AM 1240, 92.7 FM.
In-depth traffic, news, and information. Mornings on Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
You've been in a wreck.
756-6400.
You've been wrongfully fired.
756-6400.
A turkey is suing you out of the blue.
756-6400.
Confused about a business startup?
756-6400.
That's the number for you. 756-6400. Right here, right now, Chattanooga. Call now. Top flight legal help awaits. Get biz advice now. Representation to fight for your right. What are you waiting for? That's 756-6400. Don't sit on your rights. You've got remedies. Turn your tragedy into cash. You've got the solution from estate planning all the way to probate. Act now. Top attorneys in Chattanooga are waiting to help you get relief. Act now. No out of pocket. You don't pay a dime until we win. So win with us.
756-6400.
Call now. Top flight legal help awaits. What are you waiting for? That's 756-6400. Turn your tragedy into cash. Act now. No out of pocket. You don't pay a dime until we win. So win with us.
756-6400.
756-6400.
The essential oils have been around for thousands of years. They're beneficial because they're natural, they're safe, and they can help you. My name's Loretta Lynn. I'm with Loretta Lynn's Essential Oils, and you can find me on Facebook at Loretta Lynn's Essential Oils. If you have migraines, headaches, aches and pains, gout, diabetes, sleep apnea, erectile dysfunction, the essential oils can help you. Call me today
WDLZ HD4 Ottawa, W224AZ Chattanooga, WSDT Saudi Daisy Chattanooga.
Florida says good riddance to Irma.
I'm not frustrated. It's just sad.
President Trump leads the nation in remembering 9/11.
Our whole world changed.
This is the CBS World News Roundup Late Edition. I'm Pam Coulter.
And I'm Steve Futterman in Naples, Florida. Irma is no longer a hurricane and no longer here in Florida. Tropical storm Irma is now hovering over Georgia. Before it left the Sunshine State, and not a moment too soon, it delivered one more body blow, dumping large amounts of rain on Jacksonville, causing the St. Johns River there to overflow, bringing floodwaters to the downtown area. CBS's Jerika Duncan is there.
We are in rescue mode right now.
Mayor Lenny Curry says people most at risk were told to leave Wednesday.
Ma'am, are you okay?
More than 100 people were rescued from their homes today within 2 blocks. In St. Johns County, southeast of Jacksonville, several properties could not withstand the over 80-mile-per-hour wind gusts.
Some areas seemed to dodge a bullet yesterday. There was damage, but not nearly to the extent some had predicted. In the Florida Keys, however, There was no way to sugarcoat it. It was bad. Elaine Quijano is there.
The splintered homes and wind-tossed boats were only matched by the scene on the ground. In the lower key areas, just 10 miles east of Irma's landfall, the brute force of 130 mile-per-hour winds and nearly 15 feet of surge easily destroyed oceanside homes in Marathon and in Big Pine Key.
There were some water rescues here in the Naples area today. This young man decided to remain inside his home for Irma. Today, he said.
And what did you say to yourself? Did you say this was wrong?
I should have gone to a shelter.
And Pam, there are still around 7 million people without electrical power.
At least 7 deaths are blamed on the storm. Americans paused today to remember the deadliest attack ever on U.S. soil 16 years ago. At the Pentagon, President Trump warned America cannot be intimidated and said the country would continue to fight extremism.
We are reminded of the timeless truth that when America is united, no force on earth can break us apart. No force.
Bells tolled. There were moments of silence, and family and friends honored lost loved ones at Ground Zero in New York.
My grandmother, Ruth Sheila Lapin. Grammy Ruth, I wish more than anything that I could have met you. I know that you were a wonderful person, and I love hearing stories about you from my parents.
Wall Street had a good start to the week. The Dow was up 259 points to close over 22,000, and NASDAQ rose 72. Now this.
Ransomware is software that can infiltrate your business through email, enabling cyber criminals to hijack sensitive information as ransom for your own data's release. Leveraging Barracuda email security with advanced threat detection can stop a ransomware attack in its tracks. As an added measure, Barracuda Backup allows you to recover your data without having to surrender to extortion. Crime doesn't pay when you protect your business data with Barracuda. Go to barracuda.com/ransomware to learn more.
Cars damaged during Hurricane Harvey could start flooding the market soon, but Carfax says even today, 325,000 flooded cars are on the road nationwide, a 20% jump from last year. Used car expert Chris Basso from Carfax explains.
Historically, half the cars damaged by floods get resold, but make no mistake, they are ticking time bombs. With the number of waterlogged wrecks quickly rising, Carfax and your mechanic can help keep you from being sunk.
Check to see if your car or one you want to buy has a history of flood damage. It's free. Visit carfax.com/flood.
The UN Security Council has just voted unanimously to impose new sanctions on North Korea in response to its latest nuclear test. U.S. Ambassador Nikki Haley.
We are done trying to prod the regime to do the right thing. We are now acting to stop it from having the ability to continue doing the wrong thing.
The resolution bans textiles from North Korea and caps crude oil shipments to the country. The Supreme Court has temporarily blocked last week's federal appeals court ruling that limited President Trump's travel ban and would have cleared the way for thousands of refugees to come to the U.S. CBS's Andrew Cohn.
The Supreme Court, as expected, granted the government's request to allow it to continue to enforce parts of the travel ban while the constitutional issues are resolved in court. This stay could last a day or two, or it could last weeks until October when the Supreme Court hears argument on the ban.
You're listening to the CBS World News Roundup.
Traffic, news, and information. Mornings on Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
3, 2, 1.
Chattanooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM's news now.
Hurricane Irma, now Tropical Storm Irma, is moving over Chattanooga. And we're beginning to feel the deadly effects of the storm, and it's only going to get worse as time goes on. Winds up to 55 miles per hour could be felt overnight, and we're supposed to get about 3 inches of rain throughout the week. The Electric Power Board in Chattanooga is anticipating power outages, and in Georgia, a state of emergency has been declared for all counties. Schools closed both Monday and Tuesday. In Hamilton County, however, schools so far remain open. Heavy rains and high winds are going to continue throughout our day into tomorrow, even the day after, eventually tapering off by Thursday. Flash flooding is possible in the Chattanooga area, and downed power lines are expected. Trees falling on roadways also anticipated by TDOT. Russell Stroud, Nooga Radio News Talk 92.7 now.
In-depth traffic, news, and information. Mornings on Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM. Broadcasting live to over 1 million souls in Chattanooga, the Tennessee Valley, and beyond on frequency modulation 92.7. Sean Hannity. 25,000 watts on digital FM 95.3 HD4. CBS Radio News. Pulsing the earth with amplitude modulation on 1240. NASCAR. Bloomberg Markets. David Tulis. Streaming strong at Noogaradio.com. Live on YouTube and Facebook. Nooga Radio. News Talk 92.7. Chattanooga Radio.
Hello, Chattanooga. You're listening to AM 1240 and 92.7 FM. Clutch with Keon Rose here on Nooga Radio and Noogaradio.com. Nooga Radio, by the way, your leader in weather, traffic, news, and sports. We're trying to be your leaders, by the way, in traffic and weather today, specifically because Hurricane Irma is on its way, and we've got a news report coming in right now. Nooga Radio. Do you have a report for us?
I do, yeah. So I want to give you a bit of an update on what's going on the ground here. We're expecting 3 inches of rain overnight all the way from Dunlap down to Dalton. That goes east and west, too, from Murphy to Scottsboro. 1 to 3 inches of rain, depending on where you are. That's going to be overnight. Temperatures staying mostly in the mid-60s. The big news, though, is that Hamilton County schools are delayed for 2 hours tomorrow, and Catoosa County schools are closed entirely tomorrow, just as they were closed today. We're expecting high winds and EPBs on standby to recover any power losses that there may be. And so far, that's it.
All right. Thank you, Russell.
No problem. Bye.
As our news director, Russell Stroud, by the way, working tirelessly to make sure that you have all of the news you need to know about this storm and the way that it is affecting this city. In addition to the Hamilton County school closings, which will be delayed 2 hours tomorrow, the campuses of Chattanooga State closed early today, and we're waiting on news as to whether or not they're going to open late or not open tomorrow as well. As far as the information from our weather center, we are at 58 degrees currently. Our wind speed, as it is currently being measured, is 22 miles per hour, though there have been reports of higher wind speeds than that. And the fact is that as this storm gets closer, we may experience that number going up. We will try and keep that covered for you as much as we possibly can. We're expecting also a lot of flooding in certain areas because of the high amount of rain. The barometer is reading at 28.9 inches of expected rain. So we've got a lot of stuff coming our way. This storm is just beginning. We're looking at the possibility. Mike Steele, one of our reporters, called in earlier off of Highway 58 to say that he is seeing trees, the branches being blown off of trees. So we are seeing high wind speeds have a serious effect on a lot of the greater Chattanooga area, which of course is going to affect all of us and all of our property, our homes, which you can't move your home, but you can move your car if your car is parked next to a particularly dubious tree. I would say don't park your car next to any trees, really, just to keep it safe and just to be on the safe side, because you just never know how this stuff goes. And when it comes to insurance companies, they are not particularly forgiving of things that look like it might be your fault. So I would be on the safe side and move the car if you can, move the vehicle, move yourself, move your child, whatever it is that you need to move to keep that safe. And we will give you news updates as often as we can here at Nooga Radio and Noogaradio.com. Make sure to check us out on AM 1240, 92.7, and 95.3 on HD Radio. We are on HD 4. Make sure to check us out. We've got you covered like nobody else in the greater Chattanooga area. You're listening to Clutch with Keon Rose, by the way. I'm Keon Rose, if that was not abundantly clear. But I did want to talk about football And I suppose I can still talk about football, but I do have to talk about football in the significance of all of this weather, right? There's a report out that Butch Jones, Tennessee Jones, is expecting that Tennessee, Florida will be played as scheduled, right? They are scheduled to play next week. And next week, the storm should have passed, but we're going to assess the damage. We're going to see what it is. We got a quote from SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey on the status of that game, and the quote reads as follows: "Now that the storm has passed through Gainesville, the University of Florida is working with local authorities to assess the effect of the storm on the campus and the Gainesville community, at the same time ensuring the appropriate security and local officials are available to host a game." So you have to make sure that people didn't evacuate and can't get back in time to host the game. You've got to make sure that you've got police and other fine folks, make sure that everybody is safe at the game, headed to the game. You have to make sure that none of the structural integrity of any of the buildings, in particular the stadium, have been compromised by the storm. There's a lot of check boxes to hit here to make sure that this game is going to be played as scheduled. And the one thing that I learned about just nature in general as a result of all of these things coming out is this. Yeah, nature doesn't care about your football, right? And I think that can apply to a greater level. Like, nature just doesn't care. I would say about your football specifically, like, we are scrambling to make sure this Tennessee-Florida game happens, because it is going to complicate things if Tennessee somehow cannot play Florida, right? In terms of the way that the picture looks like in the SEC. It's going to complicate things down the road. The issue here is this. When you look at the greater picture of how this storm works and how hurricanes work and how nature works, nature does not just not care about your football. Nature just does not care. And so, I mean, the greater lesson to learn here is, like, respect it, right? I'm telling you, move your car from underneath trees. Now, you're looking outside and maybe things don't look that bad to you. I don't know. But I'm saying respect the possibility that could happen and go ahead and move your car. That's what I'm saying. Right? Like, there's a certain level of respect you do have to have for nature when these things happen, in a way that we are often very distracted by the things that we are obsessed with. And we are oftentimes distracted by football because it is a great game and it's very entertaining. But the fact of the matter is that when nature comes rolling through, you get out of the way. Because if you don't, you are going to get whacked. And it also should be a reminder, by the way, that those who were not able to get out of the way, could not get out of the way, did not know any better, whatever the reason is, that we've got to be very empathetic towards those people, that we have to remember that there are those who were not able, for whatever reason, to get out of the way of this storm. And as we experience the effects of this storm on our own city, to understand and remember that other people have gone through worse. Like, there was a worse version of this going through somebody else's life. Like, there's a level of humility that you have to have when it comes to the way that these things work, and when it comes to nature and the way that nature can just have its way in an environment. Not to forget those people, right? Like, as much as I love football, and as I will be talking about football later in the show, I'm simply saying, don't put the football ahead of the people, right? Like, that's the reminder that we all have to remind ourselves, that I have to remind myself. Don't put the sports in front of the people, because all kinds of things go wrong when you do that. From a corruption standpoint, we talk about what happened at Baylor, you talk about what happened at Ole Miss with Hugh Freeze, or from just a humanity standpoint, when we forget what is actually important in our lives, and not to realize that stuff is gone, or not to realize that stuff is important until it's gone. I mean, let's not get to that point. Fletch with Keon Rose at AM 1240 and 92.7 FM. So we'll talk about Tennessee They played Indiana State, and they played a great game. Now, part of that is that they played Indiana State. And I do recognize, by the way, that when you play Indiana State, and you are the Tennessee Volunteers, you ought to win, right? Like that should just be obvious, but it's not obvious, right? I've been watching Tennessee since I've moved here. I moved here in 2011. I've been watching Tennessee since at least that long. And it is not obvious to me that when you put a school in front of Tennessee that they ought to beat the brakes off of, that they'll actually do it. That is, in fact, not obvious, right? And you could go back to Butch Jones's first year when Butch Jones was 5-7 at this school. Butch Jones lost to South Alabama. And that's a game that, to me, it doesn't matter if you're a new head coach. You got to beat South Alabama. Right? Like that school should, that team. And I know that, again, this is these excuses that many coaches like to have, which is that, oh, yeah, no, I came here and the pantry was bare. I didn't have talent. I didn't have players. You are Tennessee. You roll up on South Alabama. You got to cold clock that team. You just do. I don't know how else to say it. There's that's the expectation that I have. And I don't think it's a particularly unreasonable expectation. And I say this as a person that's not a fan, just as a person with a soft spot watching on. You've got to cold clock that team. Didn't do it. Right? Tennessee played a pretty tough schedule the following year. But then last year, if you recall, Tennessee played Ohio, not Ohio State, by the way, simply Ohio, and Appalachian State. And both of those games were games that Tennessee should have won outright. They did win those games, right? They beat Ohio 28-19. They beat Appalachian State 20-13. And the South Alabama game that I just referenced, they beat South Alabama 31-24. It wasn't like they lost these games, but it was, again, overwhelmingly concerning when you watched them in the context of that season, how much that school struggled to play opponents that I would have guessed were well below them in terms of talent. Right? Like Appalachian State, Ohio, and South Alabama. Now, Appalachian State does have a reputation of being giant killers. They have knocked off big schools before, but that's not an excuse. That's not an excuse, especially when you look at that game. Like in the context of that game, the way that Tennessee struggled to throw the ball, the way that Tennessee struggled to run the ball, the way that Tennessee struggled on special teams, well, there's not anything left to struggle on. Really? That's all the things. That's all the things that make up football. If you struggle on all three counts, by all rights, you ought to lose. Right? Like that was a win that felt like a loss. The Ohio game, win that felt like a loss. I think Tennessee's defense stepped up and made some plays when it really counted, but it didn't make plays consistently throughout the game, and offensively was just dreadful. And I don't know how you could watch that and go, yeah, this school is not playing up to its potential, because that's the only obvious conclusion that you could draw. You really could. Right? Like, I think that we give Butch Jones a little bit of a pass for the South Alabama game because it was his first year. I'm not giving him a pass on that one. That's a school that you just ought to pound into oblivion, and they didn't do it. Didn't do it. So when I'm coming up to the Indiana State game today to talk about it, I'm looking back on what happened on Saturday, and I'm going, it was not obvious to me that Tennessee was going to beat Indiana State 42-7. I'm glad they beat them 42-7 for the reason that I just said. That's a school you ought to beat the brakes off of. Like, you ought to beat that school. Now, here's the thing. I'd like to get to the point with Tennessee where I am not simply happy for the fact that you beat a school that you were supposed to beat. That's the point I'd like to get to. And maybe we're finally getting there, because I am very much impressed, and I feel like I'm learning a lot about this Tennessee team. But I am very much impressed by the way in which they play. Like the way in which they won this game. They won 42-7. But then I looked at Quentin Dormady's numbers. Quentin Dormady didn't throw the ball a bunch of times. He threw the ball 18 times. He was 13 of 18 for 194 and 2 touchdowns. John Kelly, 18 carries for 80 yards. And you've got to think, this is the most balanced attack that I've ever seen the Tennessee Vols play in the Butch Jones era. It's the most balanced attack I've ever seen them play. They are a school. This is a transformation. And I think that the MVP of the Tennessee Volunteers and the person I credit the most with this transformation is offensive coordinator Larry Scott. Because this is night and day from what Mike DeBoard was giving us last year, which is a school that was running the ball ultra conservatively in the first half of games, and then they would get down big, right? Just be in just the pits, and then one of two things would happen: either they would start throwing the ball and catch up and win somehow, or they would spiral out of control and lose worse. That was it. Those were the two options that you had last year. This is a far cry from that. Like, this is actual improvement to the point where I know that I thought the Vols could win 8 games this year. I feel like I looked at their schedule and I thought, look, there's 8 games on this schedule that they can win. My question is, do they actually win them? And what I learned from the Indiana State game was, well, the ones that they should most obviously win, they're going to win those, right? Like, those aren't going to be struggles. And the games that they have a chance to win, because I think that they have got a chance to beat Florida, they might be able to beat Florida. And here's the thing, too. When it comes to beating Florida, Florida doesn't look good either. Now, I mean, if you were to take a poll of the people who thought that Florida was going to win the SEC East, there's a good number of people. I would say split between the SEC media roughly. It's a 50-50 toss-up between whether Georgia or Florida was going to win the East. But what the toss-up didn't include was Tennessee. Like, we're pretty sure this is supposed to be the down year of the Vols. And from all intents and purposes, from the looks of it, this team is at least better coached. And that goes a long way. Like, you don't get down years on better coached. Now, it does help that John Kelly is running like a monster in the way that we did not fully expect. Like, I thought that John Kelly was going to be pretty good. I don't know that I could have expected John Kelly to go out there looking like Marshawn Lynch, because that guy's hard to bring down. I mean, he is a beast, and he is running in a manner where, again, I give tons of credit to the balance of Larry Scott, because he is running in a way that suggests that he's got more to give, but Larry Scott's not giving you everything. Tennessee had 150 yards on the ground. They had 194 yards in the air. To me, this speaks of a level of improvement that I was not expecting, okay? And I know they played Indiana State, but I'm telling you, it's not obvious that they should have beaten that school when given the track record that Tennessee has played many schools for which it should have been obvious that it's that they should have run that school over. They didn't. They simply did not. And that, to me, is a hugely important improvement. That I give the definition between when a school is good and when a school is great and when a school is bad, right? Bad teams lose to everybody. Everybody shows up in your gym and they feel like they can punk you. That's how you know you're a bad team. You're in your house and you're not sure if you can win. And it doesn't matter who the opponent is. Everybody shows up and they think they can beat you. It's bad. It's a bad team, right? A simply good team, a team that I would describe as being in purgatory, and you can be in purgatory very differently across a different array of sports. But in football, being in purgatory, especially college football, being in purgatory is simply this: the notion that you are going to win 7 games, 8 games in a season, and that'll be that, right? You're not going to win your division. You're not going to win your conference. You're not going to make the playoff. Forget a national title. You're just good. You're not bad. You're just good. And good teams do this. Good teams beat the teams that they're supposed to beat. They don't beat anybody else. Though there are some good teams, and there's different varieties of good teams. There are good teams that will beat the teams they're not supposed to beat and lose to the teams they're supposed to beat, right? Like they play up and down to the level of their opponents. This team is simply average, right? Like they're not good enough to do anything for you, but they're not bad enough either that they're worthless. They're just an okay team, right? Like an okay to good team. Then you've got your great teams. Great teams feel like, even if they don't, they feel like they can beat everybody. And I don't know where the Vols are on that meter this year, but I know they're not bad. And there were some of you expecting bad, right? I mean, I talked to some Tennessee fans, and the diagnosis was, yeah, wait, we might be lucky to win 5. You were expecting bad, and I'm not blaming you for expecting bad, but I think it's time to alter your expectations, maybe just a little bit. This is a different team you're looking at. And I know you're not supposed to be able to tell this sort of thing from a victory over Indiana State, but the school was in such a situation as such that you could tell this sort of thing from watching them play Indiana State. Clutch with Keon Rose on AM 1240 and 92.7 FM. We're going to talk about Georgia and their victory over Notre Dame and what this means for Kirby Smart and his legacy. Next.
3, 2, 1.
Chattanooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM's news now.
Hurricane Irma, now Tropical Storm Irma, is moving over Chattanooga. And we're beginning to feel the deadly effects of the storm, and it's only going to get worse as time goes on. Winds up to 55 miles per hour could be felt overnight, and we're supposed to get about 3 inches of rain throughout the week. The Electric Power Board in Chattanooga is anticipating power outages, and in Georgia, a state of emergency has been declared for all counties. Schools closed both Monday and Tuesday. In Hamilton County, however, schools so far remain open. Heavy rains and high winds are going to continue throughout our day into tomorrow, even the day after, eventually tapering off by Thursday. Flash flooding is possible in the Chattanooga area, and downed power lines are expected. Trees falling on roadways also anticipated by TDOT. Russell Stroud, Nooga Radio News Talk 92.7. Now.
In-depth traffic, news, and information. Mornings on Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM. Broadcasting live to over 1 million souls in Chattanooga, the Tennessee Valley, and beyond on frequency modulation 92.7. Sean Hannity. 25,000 watts on digital FM 95.3 HD4. CBS Radio News. Pulsing the earth with amplitude modulation on 1240. NASCAR. Bloomberg Markets. David Tulis. Streaming strong at NoogaRadio.com. Live on YouTube and Facebook. Nooga Radio. News Talk 92.7. Chattanooga Radio.
Don't punish your gun by leaving it in a corner. Shoot it, sell it, or just toss it. Okay. Don't toss it. Make money with it. Shooter Supply and Indoor Range, the hottest gun shop in town, finds buyers for your extra firearms. Put cash in your pocket today. Are ARs cluttering your closet? Rugers resting and rusting in your rec room? Shooter's Supply and Indoor Range in Hickson will take your firearm and put it on consignment. To you, that means no money out of your pocket with a small fee when the gun sells. Larry at Shooters has got an online store. He's licensed to ship anywhere. It's as if Shooter Supply were giving your billfold cover fire. Get the biggest number of bucks from the smallest Derringer to the longest Barrett. Maximum price, shortest time. What a great deal. Shooters-range.com. Shooters-range.com. That's shooters-range.com. Check with Larry.
When my brother and I opened our first Jets Pizza, we believed if we made the best pizza, customers would find us. So we made fresh dough each day, used fresh toppings, and premium mozzarella cheese. 300-plus stores later, we still do.
Try Jet's famous 8-corner pizza with premium mozzarella cheese and 1 topping, now just $11.99 for a limited time only. Jet's Pizza, the best pizza in town. 3600 Hickson Pike.
Life is short. Eat better pizza.
Let's get Jets.
Hi, this is Eric Pelton. Taxes, accounting, business advice. I've got a neat brochure, 12 ways to improve your business profits. Come on by for a free consultation and we'll give you a copy. E.J. Pelton Company, 332-3339.
I have the best steak selection in town. Name of the business is Don's Meat Shop, and I'm Donnie Raines. Just ask for Donnie. I make over 20 different types of sausages. Most of them are great for grilling. We have the best selection, best quality. We have the hard-to-find items. Don's Meat Shop.
In this moment, who has your back? Do you know the name of your insurance agent? Does your agent know your name? Or would you call a 1-800 number that connects you with whom? Another state? Another country? Get a local independent insurance agent with Auto Owners Insurance. Someone you can call when bad stuff happens. In this moment, get an agent who will protect you in that moment. Let Goss Insurance in Chattanooga help you today. GossInsurance.wordpress.com. Goss, representing Auto Owners Insurance, the no problem people. GossInsurance.wordpress.com. Goss, representing Auto Owners Insurance, the no problem people. 875-2500, 875-2500. GossInsurance.wordpress.com. Goss, representing Auto Owners Insurance, the no problem people. 875-2500. Let Goss Insurance in Chattanooga help you today. GossInsurance.wordpress.com.
Hi, I'm David Crockett, and I'm here with David Tulis, and we're having a little discussion over who's the number one Nooga centrist. If you want to keep up with free market ideas, then read Nooganomics.com. David Tulis, the blogger with the biggest pen.
Hi, this is Chrissy. And this is Summer of Summer Cares. There are too many homeless veterans in Chattanooga. Please help us in our Shoebox for Veterans campaign. You can fill a shoebox with hand warmers, hand sanitizers, hand wipes, cough drops, razors, shaving cream, toothbrush, toothpaste, soap, shampoo, deodorant, snacks, socks, gloves, and even a small blanket.
And make sure you drop your shoeboxes or your shoebox items off at Nooga Radio Studio on Hickson Pike across from Bojangles below Goss Insurance or Alpine Crest Elementary School.
Please join us at the Community Kitchen in Chattanooga on November 10th from 11 to 12:30 and help us distribute these care packages to the homeless veterans of Chattanooga. No veteran should ever go homeless.
News Talk 92.7's Fast Forecast. Now, 61 degrees for our evening as we finish up the workday, getting up to 63 today for the high and 61 for the low. Rain expected to continue overnight with high winds, heavy rain pelting us. Tuesday, 65 for the high and 60 for the low. Then Wednesday, 70 for the high, 61 for the low. Rain really not letting up until Thursday with high winds coming in from Irma. That's your fast forecast.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and 92.7 FM knows your opinion is important. So call 800-8949. Agree or disagree. Call 423-800-8949. 800-8949. Nooga Radio, AM 1240, 92.7 FM, and 95.3 HD4. News, talk, sports. Nooga Radio.
You're listening to AM 1240 and 92.7 FM, Clutch with Keon Rose. Thank you for joining me today. We've been giving you traffic and weather reports from all over the city. We've been to Highway 58. We've been to Northern Georgia, and we are now waiting for a report from Saudi Daisy. The weather's not great, which I know. Captain Obvious, that's me. You're welcome. But I'm telling you this because we still have people that go out there and try and drive. We still have people that go out there and act as though the weather is not inclement in some way. When the schools have been shut down, when Hamilton County schools are not going to open, they're going to open 2 hours late tomorrow. It's a 2-hour delay for Hamilton County schools. When last I heard, when we've got winds that are varying between 11 to 20 miles per hour. So if the winds look fine to you now, that doesn't mean that they'll necessarily stay that way, right? It's varying in terms of speed. 100% on precipitation everywhere in Chattanooga. You're not going to escape it. So I'm saying stay home. That's what I'm saying. You know, stay home. Keep it locked in here to the station that covers you the most. AM 1240, 92.7 FM. And while we're going to wait on that report here, one thing that I'd like to do is get started on talking about Georgia, because Kirby Smart did a lot. He did a lot on Saturday. He beat Notre Dame by 1 point. And Notre Dame looked really good. And also, I think it's important to note that Kirby Smart beat early season Notre Dame. Early season Notre Dame is good. Just generally. Early season Notre Dame is good. It's Notre Dame, like, from halfway through the season on, that you can't trust. But that early season Notre Dame team usually is a really good team. And you add something a little bit of a defensive back and forth. But some things I noticed about the way that Georgia was playing. Jacob Fromm managing the game. It's enough. It's enough. Jacob Fromm does not have to go out there. Is it Jacob or Jake? Is it Jacob or Jake? Because I know Jacob Eason is Jacob Eason. And then we got Jake Fromm, and I like to call people what they prefer to be called. Except for Mitch Trubisky. He's still Mitch. But everybody else gets called what they want to be called, I suppose. But Jake Fromm is going out there, and he's managing the games. He's not looking like some kind of world beater. 16 of 29, 141 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 INT. These are game manager numbers, okay? He's not putting the ball up in the air a billion times. But why would you need to? And why would you need him to, right? Behind him is Nick Chubb and Sony Michel. And you even got like one monster run from the young man out of Philadelphia, DeAndre Swift, for Georgia. I mean, like this running back duo might be the best in college football. I mean, I'm watching Nick Chubb, and the man looks impossible to tackle. Sony Michel, by the way, and I said this last week, I got to say it again, the power on that guy is underrated. I mean, the speed is obvious. The power is where you look at Sony Michel and maybe don't give him as much credit because he runs in the same backfield as Nick Chubb, but the power on that guy is absolutely underrated. I mean, Sony Michel runs through people just as much as anybody else. You know, the way that those guys run the ball, and 185 yards on the ground, right, between Chubb and Michel. I mean, that's not something to overlook, and you can't. It's every bit as lethal as we thought it was going to be, and as a result, Jake Fromm does not have to do too much, and he's doing a really good job at doing just enough. But you can't have a quarterback that does just enough if you want to win football games, and that's where the defense comes in. And this is where I'm giving Kirby Smart a lot of credit. After, you know, I gave Kirby Smart a lot of crap this season because I just thought, this past offseason especially, because I just thought, well, the one thing that they hired you to do was to be this brilliant defensive coordinator. And when you are hired to be someone brilliant, to me, I know that you want your players in that'll play in your system, but that feels like an excuse because you're the guy that's supposed to be able to out-scheme the other coach by virtue of being tapped some kind of guru. Specifically Kirby Smart, because he was hired for the sole purpose of bringing a little slice of Alabama down to Athens, right? Like, that's what he was hired for. Made fun of Georgia at the time for hiring Kirby Smart because I thought, well, there's a little bit of a little brother complex to Alabama that you really want to hate the school, but in a lot of ways you're trying to emulate them and be them. But then last year, it didn't successfully come together in that kind of way. Like, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't great either. This year, I'm hoping things are a little bit better, and I have plenty of reason to believe that because the turnovers that Georgia was able to cause against Notre Dame, the thing that made them important is that they were clutch turnovers. Like, when you needed the defense to stand up and make a play, they stood up and made a play. Right? And these are not just, you know, fluky plays where you've just got fluky turnovers. Sometimes you've got turnovers that aren't repeatable, right? For instance, when you look at a quarterback and you can credit some quarterback interceptions to the wide receiver, like the quarterback didn't just do something horrible. The wide receiver either didn't catch the ball or somehow didn't necessarily make a play that would aid his team in any particular kind of way. Like, that to me is what some defensive turnovers are like, where it's just fluky, where it's someone misses a handoff or something like that, and it has nothing to do with the effort of the defense. It was just either something the offense gave you or it was fluky. That there were plays that Georgia's defense made where they simply were the better team, right? They out-hustled, they out-maneuvered, they were simply stronger than, there was a greater level of effort than on a number of plays for this Georgia defensive unit, especially along the defensive line. We forced a couple of fumbles in that game that were absolutely huge, including the one to take the ball away from Notre Dame with like a minute and a half left in the game that stopped them from being on some kind of game-winning drive, right? Because we've all seen how that story goes for so many teams, where you're down, there's a minute and a half left, and they're just going to get in the field goal range, and you're Georgia, you're only up by 1 point, and you don't have the kind of quarterback that can march you down the field. And you can't go around handing it off to your running backs because the clock is your enemy in that particular instance. You need a stop. You need a turnover. And Georgia's defense stood up and gave them a stop and a turnover. And for me, that to me is huge. That's huge when it comes to analyzing this football team. That defense is scary. And they take what they want from you. And like, say what you want about Notre Dame, and as much as Notre Dame underachieves, which is regularly and about near all the time, that like Georgia had a talented unit, but they played against the Notre Dame team that's always talented, right? Like that school has so many restrictions on grades and all of these things that make it harder for them to recruit, but they'll never not have talent because they're Notre Dame, right? Like people still want to play for Notre Dame, like people still want to play for the Cowboys and the Yankees. Yeah, people still want to play for Notre Dame. And they played against the level of talent that's a real nice group of guys that Notre Dame has over there. Georgia just dominated their offensive line, just took it apart. I mean, you had players going in there unblocked on some plays where it was just a matter of speed. That to me is absolutely alarming. If you want to talk about things that I absolutely did not see coming, Georgia and that defense. I thought Georgia was going to beat Notre Dame. I did not expect them to be able to handle that, especially when you look at the fact that Georgia lost a number of close games last year, right? Like close games, that's the thing that you have to overcome if you're going to be the school that goes on a run, if you're going to be the school that makes that ascension to great team status. That's kind of where you have to go next. Clutch with Keon Rose on AM 1240 and 92.7 FM. So, yeah, I feel like I kind of have to give credit where credit is due to Kirby Smart. Got to give credit where credit is due to Dabo Swinney. Got to give credit where credit is due to Butch Jones and Larry Scott and the Vols, because they did something that I did not see coming. Right? Like Tennessee beating Indiana State. Yeah, that's not surprising. Tennessee beating Indiana State 42-7. Look, I'm not happy that this is something that impresses me, but I am impressed by it. Especially with the history that this school has had with that. Clutch with Keon Rose on AM 1240, 92.7 FM. So I'm going to give you some of my thoughts on the first weekend of NFL football, which I don't know if you've noticed, but I've been avoiding all show. And I've been avoiding it all show because it didn't go well for me. I root for the Redskins, which means, of course, I've consigned my life to just a chain block of sadness. And I'm not necessarily going to go through everything that happened in that game, because upsetting doesn't even begin to describe all of what that was. But what I will say is this. When the games began, I think the NFL did that thing that the NFL usually does, where it lets you know you can't really predict anything. Not in that game. You can't really predict anything in that game, right? Because I couldn't have given you the Ravens beating the Bengals the way that they did, right? Like I'm not a big fan of Andy Dalton generally, but I couldn't have given you 20-0 Ravens over Bengals. I couldn't have given you that one. Right? And I definitely couldn't have given you Jaguars over Texans 29-7 because we all have penciled in the Texans as some kind of playoff team, right? Have we not? Right? And I think we've all consigned the Jaguars to the basement. But here's the thing. Leonard Fournette, immediate impact player. A lot of people criticized the Jaguars for taking Leonard Fournette with the 4th pick in the draft. They did because Leonard Fournette is a running back in a sport where the running back is increasingly not as valuable as running backs used to be. And Leonard Fournette is like the face of the exact kind of running back that is not as valued as running backs used to be, right? He is the specific, you turn around, you hand it to him, he runs between the tackles kind of guy. And he played up against the defense in the Texans where we know that the Texans have a solid defense. But Leonard Fournette in 26 carries had 100 yards and a touchdown. And I feel like the Jaguars have found the formula for their entire season. Don't give the ball to Blake Bortles. I don't care what you have to do to not give the ball to Blake Bortles, but don't you dare give the ball to Blake Bortles. And here's how I know that's the plan. Blake Bortles threw the ball 21 times. The number of carries that every other Jacksonville running back had put together, 39 carries. They ran the ball twice as much as they threw the ball. Now, why would they do something like that in an NFL that is increasingly a passing league? Oh, their quarterback is terrible. Their quarterback is absolutely dreadful, and they are trying to hide him to the best of their abilities. Now, you might get 1 or 2 good Bortles games this season, but as much as you can, you turn around and give the ball to Leonard Fournette. Leonard Fournette, 26 carries, 100 yards, a touchdown. Yeah, that's the Jaguars all season long. And whether or not it works has everything to do with Leonard Fournette. If Leonard Fournette is good, can stay healthy all season long, can take the punishment, then Leonard Fournette is going to be amazing. The Jaguars are going to win some football games. If Leonard Fournette cannot do this for an entire season, and I don't think he can, because my gosh, if you give a guy 26 carries in a modern-day NFL for 16 weeks, how on earth do you expect that guy to survive? And yet the quarterback is as such that you can't do anything else. And I look at Houston, and Houston's situation might be worse, which I didn't think was humanly possible, right? Here's the Houston situation, and might actually be worse, that they started the season thinking, okay, we're going to give the ball to Tom Savage as our quarterback, and we're going to allow Deshaun Watson to come on in. Then you had to give the ball to Deshaun Watson at some point in the season because Tom Savage, or at some point in the game, because Tom Savage was terrible. Like, terrible is not even a big enough or broad enough descriptor to describe what it was that Tom Savage was doing out there on a football field, which is to say he was doing something, but I couldn't call it football. Now, part of it is that Houston's offensive line is absolutely ridiculous and bad. That's part of it. But the other part of it is that Tom Savage has no mobility whatsoever. And when you put a quarterback who has no mobility whatsoever behind an offensive line that is ridiculously bad, you don't get great results. And we've seen this over and over and over again in the NFL. So they had to throw Deshaun Watson out there because at least Deshaun Watson gives you the added dimension of the ability to move. His legs work. Like that is huge. And yeah, Deshaun Watson played an all right game. He was 12 of 23, 102 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 INT for a rookie. He had 4 sacks for a loss of 21 yards. Okay? But Deshaun Watson almost immediately did one thing that Tom Savage has never done, which is throw a touchdown in the NFL as a rookie. Like, Tom Savage is still not throwing a touchdown in the NFL as much as we want to talk about, well, Tom Savage has got a lot of potential. Yeah, sure. And I'm not a big fan of tossing quarterbacks out there if they're not ready. But if you're Houston, you don't have a choice. You don't have a choice. You have a poorly designed football team that your coach has been covering up for years, and your division has been covering up for years because you play in a division that's not particularly great. Right? speaking of teams in the division that are not particularly great, the Titans. Tennessee played the Raiders, and they didn't play a good game at all. Right? Like, that to me is the part of the problem. Now, Derek Carr is just a good quarterback, man. Like 262 yards, 2 touchdowns for Derek Carr. And they beat him 26-13. But I'm not a fan of what I'm seeing with Tennessee, which is like, I'm looking for a passing touchdown. And Marcus Mariota, 256 yards, but no touchdowns. Right? Like, this is problematic. Marcus Mariota ran for a touchdown, but he didn't throw for one. To me, this is huge because part of the development of Marcus Mariota, and quite frankly, part of the Tennessee Titans getting to the next level as a football team, has to be Marcus Mariota beating teams with his arm, not with his legs. And Marcus Mariota, to me, is perfectly capable of doing this. I think they need to open up that offense, and they won't. They won't because Mike Mularkey just won't. Right? That Mike Mularkey is going to sink on the ship of ultra-conservative coach. That he refuses to play the game of football as people play the game of football in this decade. Won't do it. Right? Just won't do it. And I'm like, well, I can't really, I don't know what they do there. Like, besides fire him. Like, I don't know. Like, Mike Mularkey has come off a good season, so you can't just fire him and replace him with who exactly, which is always my question. You don't just advocate for the firing of a guy without someone in mind to replace him with. But this team is too talented to get just pushed around the way they were. Right? And you got to see a little bit of the brilliance of Marcus Mariota. And you got to see a little bit of the brilliance of Adoree Jackson, who they just drafted. Right? Returning punts. I think he jumped over the punter. I mean, that guy's an incredible athlete. And I feel like Mike Mularkey is going to sink a very talented team because he refuses to play football the way people play football in this decade. Which I guess is his prerogative, but what is the point of drafting as well as the Titans draft and constructing the team the way that they've constructed it if you're simply going to hand the keys to a guy who is hell-bent on sinking the ship? I'm not sure. And the other thing that surprised me, the other thing that I could not have ever predicted under any circumstance, the Rams beating the Colts 46-9. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. You could have given me Rams over Colts. But I would have thought that was a lower scoring game than that. You couldn't have given me Rams over Colts to the tune of 46-9. You couldn't have given me Jared Goff throwing 306 yards, completing 21 of 29 of his passes, throwing a touchdown. You couldn't have given me that. And I don't know what to make of this Rams victory because I don't know if that means that Jared Goff is good now or that the Colts are really, really bad. Because the Colts have been bad for a while. The question is now whether we downgrade them from bad to really bad or downgrade them from bad to really, really bad. Right? But again, we're living in an NFL, and I told you this was going to have an impact on the weekend, but we are living in an NFL where a number of quarterbacks started that probably shouldn't have started, right? That Jared Goff was one guy that I'm like, okay, you could make the argument that maybe Jared Goff isn't good, all of those things, but obviously he showed that he belonged. Scott Tolzien, on the other hand, across the street for the Colts started Scott Tolzien in an actual NFL football game that they tried to win, or at least they claimed that they were trying to win. And I will get back to the Kaepernick drum and beat it because Colin Kaepernick, he's available, and he's good enough to do that. Right? I don't know if Colin Kaepernick can help your team win. But Scott Tolzien looked like a one-man dumpster fire. And at some point, it's just like, is winning actually more important to you than whatever politics it is that you've gotten on with Colin Kaepernick that you are trying to avoid? It's going to come back week after week after week because I'm watching a sport where the most important position played by a number of different people has a surprising amount of guys who are not good at that position, right? Scott Tolzien being another one. And Scott Tolzien was so bad on only 18 pass attempts, you had to go to Jacoby Brissett, who we know can't throw, right? The reason why the Patriots gave you Jacoby Brissett is because they don't believe in Jacoby Brissett. We know Jacoby Brissett is not a pure passer of the football. The Colts are going to be so bad. The Titans, I don't know how high the Titans can go in that division in the AFC South. I don't know how good the Jags are going to be. Their strategy of turn around and give the ball to Leonard Fournette and good heavens give the ball to anybody other than Blake Bortles. I don't know how good they're going to be. I can't tell you how good the Titans are going to be, right? Will Mike Mularkey get off of his high horse of we're not ever going to throw the ball? Will he get off of that high horse? I don't know. I can't tell you what the Texans are, right? Because that depends on what Deshaun Watson is. That depends on a lot of things. All right, Clutch with Keon Rose on AM 1240, 92.7 FM. We got a call coming in. You're on the air.
Keon, David Tulis, how are you doing tonight?
Doing good.
Good. Quick report on Saudi Daisy. Very quiet in Saudi Daisy. There's been on Ducktown Road a limb that fell, but Saudi Daisy police say that it was cleared, and it's windy, rainy up here. The accumulation of water is still not really anything to show. The gullies that run along, say, Daisy Dallas Road are not full. They're not showing any water at all, so there's not been much accumulation. Of course, 64% of Florida is without power. And here in Saudi Daisy, it doesn't look like there are any blockages of power yet. Wind is erratic and sporadic, not very great, though I saw one, as I was at the Veterans Park, one strong gust of winds across the trees. The American flags here at the park are ripping smartly in the breeze and the rain, but it's pretty quiet in Saudi Daisy.
All right. Thank you, David.
Thanks so much, Keon. Bye.
So that's all the information that we've got there for you. Saudi Daisy, things are looking all right. As David said, not an accumulation of water. We do have sporadic winds. The variances that I'm being told from our weather center are 11 to 22 miles per hour. So pretty sharp adjustments, and we could be in for a tough night with winds reaching up to 30, 35. So, and I can hear it now outside. The wind just picked up again. So again, be safe, stay inside. Don't leave your house unless you have an emergency going on. You are listening to AM 1240 and 92.7 FM.
No out of pocket. You don't pay a dime until we win. So win with us.
756-6400.
756-6400.
Essential oils have been around for thousands of years. They're beneficial because they're natural, they're safe, and they can help you.